The average age in the U.S. Congress is 57.5 years, which is lower than it was at the start of the last two-year congressional session in 2023. An analysis of Ohio's state lawmakers by the Eagleton Institute of Politics at Rutgers University, done 2 years ago, showed the average age was just over 52 years, with only 18 of 132 state legislators under 35 years old. Voters under 24 are the demographic bloc with the lowest turnout, with voters 25 to 34 only slightly higher. It's long been suggested that part of the reason is that those younger voters have trouble connecting with older officials and candidates who may not see issues related to technology, education, housing, and health care the way they do. This summer, 4 state lawmakers, Senator Michele Reynolds and Representative David Thomas, both Republicans, and Minority Leader Dani Isaacsohn and Representative Munira Abdullahi, both Democrats, were on a panel at the Columbus Metropolitan Club on the new leaders shaping Ohio politics. Also on the panel was Shaquille Alexander, the Democratic treasurer of the Columbus suburb of Whitehall. The lawmakers were asked by Columbus Dispatch reporter Haley B. Miller whether, when they got to the office after winning their elections, if it was what they expected.
The short answer is yes, which, I think you sort of have to be to do this job, but I'm a very naturally optimistic person. Couldn't do it if, I think, any of us if we weren't. And the State House, in many ways, as frustrating as it is to be in the super minority and to feel like there's sort of a portion of the state that doesn't get representation as a result, even with that, I remember my first couple weeks, some of the committee chairs, so members of the majority party, sat down with me one-on-one, walked me through what to expect in the committee. They asked me what issues I cared about, and then they ended the meeting by saying, "You're not going to like this committee. You're not going to like what we do. You're not going to agree with what we push forward, but I'm going to give you the chance to make your argument and ask your questions." And it was one of the controversial committees. So, and then I said that to a friend of mine who is new in Congress, and I sort of relayed that I just had this experience, and he just goes, "A chairman of one of my committees, not only would he never go get coffee with me, he would never speak to me one-on-one. Certainly not to ask me what I cared about." And so I do think there's we disagree on the policies dramatically, and we can get into that or not, but so there's no doubt about the level of disagreement there. But in terms of the day-to-day of how the State House functions, it is much closer, I think, to what people want their government to function like than certainly DC. Now, DC sets a pretty low bar. So there's room for improvement in the State House for sure, but I've appreciated both that you can find opportunities to be bipartisan, and there's people on this stage who have done that and who I've gotten to do that with. And you can find opportunities to fight like hell and make your case and argue and be as honest as you want, and then move on to the next business of whatever's coming, whatever needs to be addressed afterwards. And so I think it's been maybe even a little better than I expected.
I was a very reluctant candidate, served as county auditor for Ashtabula for 6 years, was not interested at all in coming down to Columbus, love the local level, love being able to actually see the impact that you have in your community when you're at the local level. But my predecessor, who I ran against, was just not doing the job. So from the very get-go, I would say in a sense, was able to see some change just because my people were not being represented. And to me, that was the most important thing. So I'm only 8 months in, so still learning, still having a lot of those conversations and kind of seeing how the State House works. I'd say that the biggest kind of happiness or change aspect, it's a relationship game. I always thought if policy is good, policy will move. If policy is bad, policy won't move, and that's just kind of how things are determined. Not quite. It's all relationships, which I actually would completely agree with. It's for the better. How many of you have watched Parks and Rec versus House of Cards? I always joke, we are not a House of Cards, state, nor reality. We're definitely much more of a Parks and Rec kind of, fun community in that sense, for better or worse too. But that's been kind of one of the nice things, is just we're starting to forge those types of relationships, and I think we're a much better state for that. In our state house, I always invite folks from back home, spend a day with me, just walk around kind of the things you're allowed to, listen in and hear what's actually happening. I think you'll actually be pretty impressed and happy with how the state house is.
I would agree with both of the comments prior, but my experience starts at the local level. I've worked in city government, county government, at the executive, at the governor's office, and now the state house. And every level seems to be different. I think the commonality is that bureaucracy is, that sucks. Just bureaucracy at its best. I mean, I just think the government does two things well. They solve problems and create problems. So bureaucracy is not great. However, the difference that you get to make, especially at a local level, is phenomenal. Being able to touch the people, being able to solve problems on your local level and actually know that you've made a difference is astounding. The State House has been incredible. I had no idea what I signed up for. I mean, I ran for office, I knew what I wanted to do, but when I got there, I had no idea until recently of exactly how much power and influence that we have as legislators. But it is a relationship building opportunity. You have to build relationships. No man or woman is an island. It's about building bridges and being able to get things done together collectively. And so to the extent that you are able to connect with people and understand and not make it about you and make it about our collective and what's good for the greater good, then you can be successful and you can use your influence. It's more about your influence and what you do through people instead of what you do to people. And so I've had a wonderful experience at the State House. I absolutely love what I do. I love opening doors for even others to be able to do at another level and be leaders and engage at this level. But I just think every level of office is just a little bit different, but bureaucracy sucks.
I appreciate what the senator and the representative said about relationships, and growing up in Whitehall, coming into office, I had already a lot of those relationships forged, so it's made my experience a lot easier. The auditor I served with, his wife worked in the schools, and I was coming up in Whitehall, and so he's seen me grow up. Our current mayor, former city attorney, has been a friend and a mentor. Michael Bivens has seen me grow up. So the people I work with and the residents we serve, they know Shaquille Alexander, the human, the person, not just the elected official. And so in Whitehall, we're about 20,000 strong, 5 square miles. About 20% of that's taken up by DSCC, so we only really have 4 square miles to work with. Very small, tight-knit community. A lot of people, they grow up in Whitehall, their kids grow up in Whitehall. Some people stick around, and they're lifers. We'll see how long I stick around. But working with the great staff over here, we have people from the auditor's office, people from the mayor's office. They've made my experience just that much better. In Whitehall, we can move at the speed of business because we're so small and we can see impact in real time. I come from the private sector, CPA by trade, so coming over to government, things were familiar but very different. So I had a lot to learn, a lot to get up to speed on, and we deal with a certain level of bureaucracy, especially with a lot of change going on. Some people aren't fans of change, and some people fear change. You fear what you don't know, but starting to see a little bit more of that in Whitehall in a way I haven't seen before. So I think the road ahead may be a little bit more challenging from the bureaucratic and just pushing policy through, but generally we can move at the speed of business, and it's made things very exciting the way we're able to get things done and really impact and change lives.
Yeah, for me, I had pretty low expectations coming into the State House. And in a lot of ways, it was a lot worse than I expected. And in some ways, it was a lot better than I expected. Same way that my colleague, Leader Isaacsohn, mentioned, the relationship building was so shocking to me. The amount of conversations that people were willing to have with you, I didn't expect that. I didn't think people would want to talk to me at all. And coming in, but however, coming in as an activist, it was a lot harder to manage my expectations and to realize I can't yell at people anymore. I can't. I've got to be respectful. I've got to manage these relationships because that's how things get done. And the bureaucracy of it all as well has been very difficult to adjust to, because you want things done. You want things done now. You want things done fast. You're like, my constituents need this ASAP, but that's just not how bureaucracy works. And that's just not how working in a state house where you're in the super minority works. And that part, I would say, is probably the part that sucks the most. Just having expectations of things getting done quickly, and sometimes you have to expect they're not going to get done at all because of the severe imbalance of power. So coming from a different perspective, it still sucks, but I am optimistic, and I'm still there to make change. And so it's just going to be in a lot slower pace than I expected.
The lawmakers were asked by a forum attendee who they consider their people when they make their decisions.
What I think about, though, in terms of representation are first and foremost my taxpayers. That's in my background, my focus, who I hear from the most are the taxpayer side.
Hello, can you hear me? Okay. When I think of my people or who I represent, I think of first and foremost the voters, all the voters in my district. But then after that, it's literally everyone who's impacted by the policies that we pass in Ohio. So all Ohioans, especially working class Ohioans is who I think of the most, because they are most impacted by the policies that we pass in a negative way, I mean. And so when I think of my people, I think of working class Ohioans, working class families who are impacted directly by the policies that we pass and have been impacted negatively in the past, however many years. That's who I think of, if that helps.
When I think of my people, I think of, again, that 5 square miles on the east side of Columbus called Whitehall. That's where I grew up, that's home. Went to Whitehall Yearling High School, moved up north for a little bit of time. After college at Otterbein University, go Cards, and been back in Whitehall about 4.5 years now. But even more specifically, the young people that look like me in Whitehall who are coming up, and I can show them that you do have options and you can do something different. I think that's very important, that I continue to show up and be present, and whether I'm speaking, whether I'm part of whatever's going on, or just simply in the room, I think all of that is equally as powerful for them to see me around.
I would say that at first it's my constituents, because that's who the people have voted, that voting block, 350,000 people that I represent, that all of their interests, whether they voted for me or not. However, as a leader, I represent a lot of different communities. I'm a pastor's wife, so I have the faith-based. I have New American communities because I'm first generation, I'm Jamaican. I have, I'm a mom, I'm a grandmother. People that look like me, the Republican Party. There's a lot of different people that I answer to and that I'm accountable to. So when I think of my people, I'm thinking, I'm also Greek in terms of a sorority. So there's a lot of people that I'm a leader and I'm accountable to.
You had me there for a second, Senator. It's a great question, and I sort of echo a lot of the sentiments. I think the one, I'll give my colleague here, I'll give him an elbow a little bit. Kids don't pay taxes, and so I think as we think about who we represent and who we're fighting for and who our people are, we should include kids. And then I think as leader, I'm new in the role, I have to think about it a little differently, because I work on behalf of the members and the caucus, and also, have one of the last few remaining statewide purviews as an elected Democrat. And so think a lot about that marginal voter, think a lot about in districts we don't represent but could represent, who is persuadable, what are the issues they care about, and then what is sort of the baseline of the districts that we do represent and the 4 million people who are represented by our caucus in the state, how are we fighting for them and centering them in what we're doing? So it's sort of, there's levels to it in terms of the different hats that all of us have to wear.
Democrats in Texas fled so they didn't have to vote on redistricting. Republicans in the U.S. Congress fled so they didn't have to vote on releasing Epstein information. How do you feel about that?
Gary, yeah.
I love this question. I'm excited for it. I want to know how much to go in on it. I guess here are my thoughts. We should have fair maps because it's basic, elemental to democracy, and we should release the Epstein report because we want to know what it says.
So obviously, I'm quoted as saying, you all may know that the House just reconvened, for example, a few weeks ago to try and override a couple of the governor's vetoes. There are a few House members that fled, in a sense, to not be there to take a vote. I'm on record as saying that's truly our duty. We should be working for the people, and we should be there when our duty calls, whether that's in Congress, whether that's in Texas, and at some point you have to go back, and you have to face the voters, and you have to face your colleagues when you fled. So you should never flee.
So, as far as I don't necessarily know whatever the issue is, we need to show up to do our jobs. Whether it's redistricting, whether it's some of the tough issues, if it's death penalty, I don't care what the issue is. If we are elected to represent the people and we do that through our vote, we need to show up, regardless of the situation. And then as far as the Epstein files, I mean, if this is public information, then the public needs to have it. I mean, some of these things are common sense. It's not rocket scientists. It's not for a rocket scientist or whatever. It's just common sense. We were elected by the people to show up and do our jobs, and we need to do that no matter what the subject or matter at hand it is. Period.
By the way, that analysis of Ohio's legislature done by Rutgers in 2023 showed 71% of lawmakers are men, compared to 29% women. Republicans dominated in the baby boomer and Gen X generations in the legislature, while millennial lawmakers were evenly split between the two major parties.